Alright, wrap up time for Forcemage Green in Modern. So first off, the deck list says 20 snow-covered forests. I actually talked to the person who made this deck and played it. I think it was at a SCGIQ, which is where I found it. And they said, which is pretty obvious looking at the list, but they just played snow-covered forest because they like snow-covered forest. So I did not play snow-covered forest, so if you do decide to play this deck, you don't really need to spend $11 on snow-covered forest. As far as how the deck played, in all honesty, it felt like a pretty good against the odds deck, like a fairly competitive against the odds deck, more than a real competitive tier type of deck. So part of the problem is we are incredibly dependent on Primal Forcemage. While we can theoretically get there with 2 damage from Ukatabi Drake and then 6 damage from Groundbreaker, really, our odds of winning without a Force Mage or multiple Force Mages are pretty small. So there's a lot of inconsistency built into the deck. Something else that drove me completely insane was trying to cast Path to Exile. As we just talked about, the mana base is 20 snow-covered forests. So there were matchups where I wanted to bring in Path to Exile, and I wanted to take out Birds of Paradise, for example. And that just doesn't really work. If we take out Birds of Paradise, then we can never cast the Path to Exiles, because we need the birds to make the mana for Path. So we're just kind of stuck, and then we're taking out other cards to bring in the paths. So if I was going to keep playing this deck, the very first thing I would do would be to add some amount of green-white duels. Probably the most efficient way would be to add 8 fetch lands, 4 temple gardens, call it a day. If you want to keep it somewhat budget, you can play Razorverge Thickets, Sun Petal Groves. I don't really care, but the deck probably should have some number of green-white duels in it if we're going to play pass. And then if we add green-white duels, we can actually play more white sideboard cards. And white gets some of the best sideboard cards in all of Modern. Rest in Peace, Stony Silence, Ghostly Prison. So there's a lot of good options. As far as how the deck actually played out, it's 100% a race. 100% we got to try to kill our opponent before they kill us because our creatures just can't block. Our deck is epically bad at blocking. Amazingly bad at blocking. It's hard to even overstate how bad this deck is at blocking because not only are our creatures just naturally not good blockers like Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch, they're just chump blockers in the best case, but a lot of our creatures just die. Our Ukatabi Drakes, our Groundbreakers, our Timbermares, they're creatures that we attack with and they die, so they're not even there to block if we want to. So that's the downside of the deck. The upside of the deck is it can be incredibly explosive. When we go turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 Primal Force Mage, and then just start playing Ukatabi Drakes, playing Groundbreakers, we can deal a ton of damage, and there's a lot of games around turn 4, turn 5, we can deal 15 or more damage, especially with the help of Summoner's Pack tutoring up whatever we need. And one of the all-stars really is Summoner's Pack for Timbermare. It seemed like that was the way we closed out a lot of games, because Timbermare taps down our opponent's team. If we got a Primal Force Mage, it's hitting for 8. So that was a way we could force through the last bits of damage, even when our opponent gets a bunch of blockers. So overall, I was happy that we got a Hurricane kill. That was one of my highlights of these matches. And we had some just really interesting and fun wins with Ukatabi Drake and Timbermare and Primal Force Mage. But overall, we only went 2-3 in our matches. And like I said in the beginning, this one to me feels more like a pretty competitive against the odds deck than a legitimate constructed deck. So I wouldn't discourage you from playing it, because it is pretty fun to play. And as far as Primal Force Mage goes, it's probably the best Primal Force Mage deck you can build. Like, I think it's on point. If we were doing against the odds Primal Force Mage, I would hope that something very close to this deck, fixing the mana base, would be where I ended up, because I think it's a great example of a Primal Force Mage deck. I just don't think it's quite there for actually winning tournaments. So if you want to play it at F&M for fun, play it in some queues on Magic Online, but I wouldn't want to take this one to anything more competitive than that. Anyway, that's been our Much Abrew About Nothing for this week. Make sure to check out the instant deck techs all next week. We're going to be having a ton of Eldritch Moon stuff now that tournaments have started and the set is officially released. And make sure to vote for the upcoming Much Abrew About Nothing decks by liking, commenting, and subscribing to the instant deck tech videos. Anyway, thank you everyone very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed Forcemage Green in Modern, and I will talk to you soon.